Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hashtag Clocked In with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Hashtag Clocked In with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jordan Edwards here, and we're hosting Hashtag Clocked In. We have the 200th episode. I can't believe it's gone this far. I can't believe it's taken this much time, but we finally reached the 200th episode. And I'm going to do a solo episode on this, and I'm going to go from where I was at, my learnings, and where I'm at today, and then where we could see this going. So for me, I looked back on when I purchased, I know the first podcast happened in 2020, February. And I know that because I remember COVID happened and pretty much it was one of these ideas where I didn't really start the podcast, but what I wanted to do was get a few recordings. So, and this is what I recommend to anyone when trying out anything is to start with a small sample size. Start with maybe something like 8, 10. See if you enjoy the activity, then start putting it out there because always a social pressure of like, hey, are people going to see it? Are they going to like it? Is it going to be critiqued? Blah, 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 blah. The truth of the matter is, in the beginning, like, unless you've built up a big personal brand, like, it's going to be out there. Like, maybe your friends and family will see it, but it's going to be out there. And it takes a long time to build up searchability. It takes a long time to build up reliability. And it's not that basically my big lesson here is like one of the big lessons I learned about with this being the 200th episode is the power of a reframe. So you might be in a place right now and you might have to reframe it, reframe the benefits, reframe how you view it. It might be a family, it might be a business, it might be something new that you want to start, it might be an adventure you're looking to go on, but you got to be able to reframe. So for me, a lot of people, when they think of podcast, they think of sponsorship, money, travel, et cetera, et cetera. And it can be all that, but for majority of people, it's not. And so for me, I had to readjust my expectations of what I wanted from it because I learned that if your expectations are too high and you constantly don't meet them, you'll feel disappointment. But if you adjust what the expectation is and the goal is, then you'll hit your expectations and you start to build momentum and feel the progress that's coming along. So for that, what I mean by that is, so originally, like we talked about, you see a podcast, sponsorship, tons of money, travel, celebrity nature, et cetera, et cetera. The reframe of it all for me has always been I was always eager to meet people and I was always eager to learn from people. And one of the things I did was I found that when I was younger, it was okay. When you're 22, 23, it's okay to say, hey, can we do a coffee meeting? Can we do a quick meetup? But as you get higher and higher status people, that coffee thing, you're going to have to get it really personalized. It's going to take a lot of effort, and they might not be in your city. So as COVID was happening, the time was expanding. The world was shrinking, though. So, what that gave me the opportunity to realize is if I wanted to network with different people, to meet new people, instead of me messaging them, hey, can I do a complimentary, like, can we do a quick call? Can we do a quick virtual coffee? Can we do whatever? It was, hey, why don't you come speak to me? and I'll share our conversation with my platform. Now, what most people don't realize about this is when you do that, that gives you 10 minutes on the front end or 10 minutes on the back end to connect with that individual. So you get to talk to them more. So you get to build a relationship with them. And that you spoke to them for the past hour. So, and you're just providing value to them. So in the beginning, when I would record these, I would record it and then I would just put the podcast out there. I wouldn't even let the guests know. I didn't clip up the videos. I didn't do any of that. And now we're at the point where I get the podcast. I have an AI software that edits it. I have a software that edits the clips so that all the clips go out on social media. And then I have a guy on my team who posts them. And you start integrating all these different pieces, but it takes time between the software and then the building and how people charge and all these different structures to really get it going. Like you'll hear people and they'll be like, "Oh, you want a podcast? We'll schedule your guests. We'll give you the blog post each week." The only reason I have a blog post now, and if you want on it, there's going to be a link below. Well, the only reason I have that is because I use Buzzsprout as a hosting platform, and the hosting platform introduced an AI feature where they write you a blog, and then I can read over it and make edits, of course. And I post that blog onto GoDaddy and it just sends out. If it wasn't easy, then there's too much friction and it's hard to do. So my point being here is that throughout the time, there's been tons of progression, but that's only because I've been perfectly positioned for it because I placed myself in this position where I go, I want to do the podcast. A huge breakthrough for me was also investing in someone to clip up my videos. Because when I did that, it caused me to not only create podcasts, but I wasn't on a weekly cadence. And the reason for that is I would do a lot of podcasts and then I'd be like, oh, this is great. I have all the podcasts saved up. I'll just start posting them. But when I started having him, it started becoming a weekly cadence because I had to provide the video to him early. Then he had to edit it early. Now there's AI software that's edits. Like there's so many things that are constantly changing in the space. And for me, it was always about how to make it as easy as possible. So back to what I was talking about. So I had to reframe it. And like I said, you get 10 minutes on the front end, 10 minutes on the back end with the guest. So what ends up happening there is you get to build a relationship with them. And then you can talk to them again and you can reach out to them because you've already built goodwill. So this allowed me to now not only have conversations, virtual coffees, but now we're having much bigger conversations because I'm showing them how I work, and then I'm introducing them into my world through having them on the get as guests, but also getting to connect with them. So it allows me to connect with individuals. Like if I see someone who I might be interested in, I'll send them a message. Hey, do you want to come on my podcast? We'll connect, maybe do an intro call, and then I'll be able to go out there and have that actual conversation with them. And now we've talked two, three times, and now we're buddies. Like, you know what I mean? We could be friends. And then if I travel to their city, you can reconnect with them. And it just opens up a lot of different doors. So for me, I've always reframed it as how do I force myself into networks? And then as of a couple of years ago, podcast agencies started to grow. So I started getting a ton of inbound people reaching out about my podcast, saying, hey, can I be a guest on the podcast? And that became another huge opportunity where I started having these people I didn't even know they were coming to me. So now I'm looking for high level individuals coming to me on a podcast. How awesome is that? And you start to get all of these different wins. And the only reason that occurs is because you readjust what you measure and monitor and you start to measure and monitor a lot of different things. So for me, it's always important that when you're working towards something or you're working on something or you're in the game, you have to find the little wins that allow you to feel that progress. So if you're going through something, find something that finds that progress. Like for me, it's posting the episodes. For me, it's connecting with the people. For me, it's doing deals outside of the episodes. And it's all of these that allow you to continue on and allow you to feel that validation that lets you know you're on the correct path. The other thing I was referring to was we were talking about how the technology accelerated and I was perfectly positioned for it. Now, there are many times in books, and I believe it's the book called Outliers, where it talks about these people who are perfectly positioned for something, and then they start getting, they were right there. It talks about how, like, Bill Gates, when he was born in high school, working on playing with the internet, playing with computers, kind of seeing how it all worked to making the mobile PC and just being perfectly positioned, age demographic, all of that. And for me, what I realized with having a podcast, it exposes you to so much more. So now I'm going to learn about these different ideas, but I can also implement them. I can also change them up. I can also adjust them. And now it's another arm for me. The other thing I view the podcast as is a marketing arm. I view it as a way to put out my content without me having to constantly feel like I'm on my phone because I repost all the clips. So this has been a huge advantage for me to share about my mission of Edwards Consulting, share how we're motivating, share how we're optimizing, share how we're improving people's performance and vision and how they see the world, but I can do it in a cool, organic way where I'm talking to incredible people and I'm not positioning myself as, hey, I know everything and everyone should listen to me. No, it's I'm constantly learning from the guests that come on the podcast, and then the guests become friends. So it's how do you level up? It's this incredible circle that ends up happening where it becomes they become in your sphere and it's always super organic. Now, as the podcast continued, you start to find different areas or different people in different things. So, like when I want to learn about a new topic, I'll start to dive into that. So, AI, for example, you might have noticed that the past few weeks, there's been a few more AI guests because I'm trying to learn about that. Or I have had more coaches on because I'm trying to learn about that, or email marketers, or Facebook marketers. I'm just having more people because I'm learning that each person that comes on, I'm having basically a coaching session with them and able to learn from them in a very organic way. So I'm getting dopamine hits left, right, and center. And it causes me to think differently, which has been expanding my mindset, which allows me to be a better individual. So the podcast started off as this, hey, I'd love to go meet all these cool people. And maybe this sponsorship, celebrity, all of that might come with it, to it's completely changed, but it's still the same, but I view it differently. So it's what things in your world or you're doing each and every day that you need to adjust the way you view it so you can build more impact, so you can feel better about what you're working on, so you can increase your reach and help more individuals. Because if we're not in our top place, then it doesn't help anybody. And one of the biggest things for me that I've been recently thinking about is learning how people learn to do new things. And you listen to yourself the first 10 podcasts and you go, that's terrible. That's horrible. Because it's that idea of you don't have any cadence, you don't have any structure, you're not really sure what you're doing, you don't have confidence. It always takes 20 hours to really build a great foundation on what you're working on. And this applies to trying out new sports like skiing, it applies to acting, it applies to comedy, it applies to trading stocks, it applies to everything that if you spend 20 hours, you might get past the point of like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm still not that good, but at least I know what's going on. And that was one of the biggest challenges that I think a lot of us face when we're going through new activities is that you might be in an arena and let's use someone for example, like let's use like Ray Dalio. He's like one of the largest, he ran one of the largest hedge funds in the world. He's if you look at him when he was younger, right? I think he started at like 26 or 28 and he builds out this hedge fund, right? So if you look at him at like 40 in the finance arena, you would say he's very good. Now, if he goes skiing, he's going to think that he has to be very good in the skiing arena, but he might have never skied in his entire life. Or you get people, and it's true for all of us in all areas. Like, yeah, some people pick stuff up quicker than others, but at that same point, sometimes it's you just haven't done the activity enough, and you are going to suck, and you're expected to suck for the first 100 episodes. And I'm just using the podcast as a reference, but it's super important for us to realize that when we go out and we try new activities, it's so important for us to sit there and think, how long is it unreasonable for me to be poor at this activity? I would think 100 episodes is unreasonable. And then the funny thing is, as you start doing the thing more and more and more, people start to relate with you as the guy who does that. And they go, wait, Jordan's always been good at public speaking. And it's like, not true, not true at all. And you realize that as the individual. But for the other person, it makes them feel better because if they had to equate the 200 plus hours of just recording time plus all of the prep time, plus all of the intro calls, plus, like it's too much time for people to comprehend. So it's easier to say he's always been good at that. And that's just not true. Yes, some people place themselves in that, but I think I want this to be an empowering thing where you listen to this and you go, wait a second, everybody is poor in the beginning. Most people are not willing to put in the work to keep going. Once they do, then you will see improvement. So it's this idea of constantly setting yourself up for showing up each and every week and doing the activity even when you don't want to, or even when you do want to. But it's doing the thing and getting the work done because there's so many of us that just hide from the work because it's so easy to hide now. You don't have to do anything. Like if I didn't put out this episode, maybe people would be like, "Yo, is everything all right? What's going on?" I have 4 guest episodes that I already do that are already banked. I could post those episodes, but I wanted to do a special one for the 200th because I remember doing the 100th, and my big takeaway, my big change I wanted to do was I wanted to speak more on here. I wanted to share more about my mission, share more about my journey, share more about how I'm optimizing my life because I wanted you guys to gain value, yes, through my guests, but also through me. It's my ability to develop a voice for myself because there's so many of us that live such inauthentic lives, and it's okay. It's okay. Most people aren't going to say it, but I think it's okay as long as you're making a plan to change it, as long as you're taking action steps to progress and move on. Because the biggest struggle for most of us, it's not the idea of changing our identity. It's the idea that we're not progressing. And sometimes we're not hitting our expectations, which leaves us in a disappointment. So one of the major things I do, zero expectations. I have no expectations. I made 30 outbound cold calls, no answers. That's cool. That's what I had the expectation that no one was going to answer. You get someone to answer, fantastic. Let's talk. Let's have the conversation. But you don't get bogged down by the results because anytime we're disappointed or upset or annoyed about anything, it's because we're focusing one on the wrong thing and we keep letting ourselves down because we have this expectation that might have been set by someone else. It might have been set by ourselves, but we don't reach the expectation. We feel disappointed. So that's first things first is remove your expectations no matter what you do. Second thing, I would take inventory on an activity and say, is it good for me or is it bad for me? Because the podcast has always been something that I've thought is good for me. Sometimes I question whether it's worth the use of time, and then I'll have like an intro call like I did on Saturday with a stress coach. He's going to be coming on the podcast in a few weeks. And it was just so revitalizing because he's so authentic. It was so exciting because he's like 20 years my senior. And it was just cool to hear someone have such an authentic journey and know that it's possible out there. And it excited me on a Friday afternoon talking to him. So it's these little things that are you have to figure out how you're going to find your wins. You got to figure out how you're going to find your positive nature. And you're going to have to figure out what you want your legacy to be, what you want everyone to know about you, what you want to be growing about you. So for me, it's always been I want to share this message so that people can live better lives. I think there's very minor things that can change someone's life drastically. Like I'll give one for each area. So with Edwards Consulting, it's mental health, physical health, community service, philanthropy, spirituality, and relationships. They're very minor things that can move the needle in all of these areas, like mental health. One of the things we do at my breakfast table and dinner, we ask us what's something we're grateful for because it gets us in a space of abundance. It gets us in a space of we have enough. It gets us in the space because we're constantly bombarded in the world by, hey, you need more of this, you need more of this, you need this. You don't need anything. We don't need anything. We have it all with us. It's nice to get those things, but we have it with us. We have everything we need. Physical health, dude, get sweating once a day. Girl, get sweating once a day. Do something. Go for a walk, go for a run, lift some weights, do Muay Thai, do swimming, do anything that gets your body moving, especially in the morning hours. Because the morning sunlight, so good for you, one, and it resets your circadian rhythm. So now you're excited and having an incredible day. Community service philanthropy, if you go out and give to someone with no thought in return, it will change everything for you. Like today, I went fishing with my fiance's younger brother. He didn't have fishing poles, or all of his fishing poles were broken. We had three fishing poles, so we gave him the three fishing poles. He loved it. He appreciated it, and it's something that you can do easily because we have so much. All of us have so much abundance, and we want to keep it all hostage, and it's just terrible because it's a hoarding mentality, which doesn't bring you any happiness or joy. The real joy comes from when you give and you see the smiles that are received. Um, relationships. Relationships. One of the easiest ways to do this that most people don't do is just send a voice message to a friend. Most friends don't talk to each other. They don't support each other, and they're not there for one another. And also, redefine what you think of as a friend. Just because they were a friend 5 years ago doesn't mean they're a friend today. I had a guest on the podcast, and he basically told me he fires his friends. He loves firing his friends because when someone's not up to the standard, you have to cleanse, you have to clean, you have to get around the right people. And then spirituality. It's this inner peace, it's this inner space. There's a Wim Hof video, and I think it's like 10 minutes, and it's basically a breathwork exercise. And you can find it on YouTube. And it just brings you back to the present moment. There's so many of us that are so sporadic and so manic and so stressed and so we got to do, we got to do, we got to do. Sometimes we got to pause. Sometimes we got to slow down and sometimes we got to calm down. And you can do breathing exercise for that. You can really slow down and get to your inner thing and think clearly. Because another big thing I realized, a lot of us aren't processing what's going on. Like, so it was funny when I started doing the podcast, I would post a lot. And now I post insane amount of times, like all over social media. But it's gotten to the point where I don't care because I know it's going to receive someone's message. And I actually received a call from a friend. And he goes, Jordan, I heard the podcast, I heard the video, and I saw the clip. And usually I just pass the clip. But it really, this one called for me at this moment in time and it landed for me. And I really appreciate that. I just want to tell you thank you. And if not that, that was it for me. Like, that's all I need to hear because it lets me know that I'm on the right mission. It lets me know that I'm doing the things I want to do. Because if we're not, we're never going to be able to get to where we want to go. It's so important for us to constantly do these things that allow us to improve ourselves, that allow us to get to a higher level. But we have to do them in a proper capacity and we have to have proper expectations for them. So back to where I was at with the podcast, as I continued on, it's become this nature of me continually listening to the top people, hearing that relationships are everything, and me realizing that I started this at 24. I'm 28 now, and realizing that this podcast has been my entryway to meet incredible people, all walks of life, all different coaches, all different. Uh, it's incredible the people I've had on the podcast. And it's broadened my perspective drastically because my real goal in life is to have a holistic perspective and to understand everybody and speak to them from a place of understanding. Because the truth is, we always align ourselves with the same individuals, and that's not a good thing. It is good to raise ourselves, to raise our standards and get around high level people, but we're going to be all walks of life. You got to speak to people in Thailand. You got to speak to people in Asia. You got to speak to people in Europe, Latin America. You got to know people all over the place. Because if you're not understanding how the world operates and how they live. And it's amazing. When I started this podcast, I was traveling around the United States and I did that for 8 months. And then this past year, I went to Europe for 7 weeks and we did the podcast there. And it's this reality of we might be going back to an in-person world, a virtual world mix, but the podcast has allowed me to connect with so many people that I never would have connected with, and I'm eternally grateful for that. It's even more of a gratitude for me for the people that listen and maybe learn something and maybe have a takeaway. Because if they can learn one thing, then I feel like this is becoming a more positive space in the world because there's so much negativity, there's so much stress. And I had somebody tell me, they go, "You're a half glass full kind of guy." And I go, "Thanks." And they're like, "You've always been like that." And I go, "Not true. I practice it. I practice it in my podcast. I practice it when I have my group coaching Monday night and Thursday morning. I practice it whenever I interact with anyone because there's so many of us that don't believe it's possible. But I want you to realize that it is. You can do whatever you want to do, and you might not get the results you want, but you can only control the controllables. And I'm planning on doing this for a much longer period of time because the net benefit is so high. The ability for me to go, "Hey, do you know any restaurateurs?" Absolutely. Do you know any CEOs of companies? Absolutely. Do you know any people who are in MMA? Absolutely. So now I have such a broader spectrum when I reference, "Hey, I'm having an issue with this thing. Who can I go to or who can I assist? Or who needs help with this?" There's a guy who literally was having he's 31 and he was having he had cancer removed. And I knew one of my guests on the podcast, he was 44 and just had a cancer removed and he started getting really into cancer removal and cancer prevention. And I was like, why don't I connect these two? And that's what I did. And it made both of them think. It took a 5 minute activity, but it was just such a value add. So when you constantly get into this space of abundance of connect the people, do the things, help the people, allow people to learn from your journey and give back, it becomes such a self-fulfilling thing where it's like, it's not how well is it working? When's it going to work? It's working. How big can we make this work? And so I'm so excited for this journey. I'm so excited to be doing this. I can't wait to see in the future when it's more studios, it's more travel, it's more meeting guests in person. And it's just a continued journey for me because I truly enjoy this. I am deeply curious. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned about empathy. I've learned about listening, conversating with others, and how those conversations can go. And it's been an incredible journey, and I'm eternally grateful for it. And I would take time and I would recommend to all of you to take inventory of where you're at. Sit down and think about what you're doing or how you can improve or what's going well in your life. Because when you start asking yourself these questions, you start to see the good in things and you start to see the positive nature. And I'm so excited about this 200th episode. Can't wait for 200 more episodes, as this is a joy that I get every single time I podcast. It gives me light, it gives me a little bit of fire, keeps me motivated. And if you guys enjoy this, please leave a 5-star review. and I'm starting to work on my YouTube. And so if you see this, log on to YouTube. It's Jordan F. Edwards, and I'm growing the channel there. I think we have 1,400 videos posted. There's shorts and long form, and I would love for you to check it out. And we're just going to continue growing. We're going to continue being on this journey, and it takes time. And I realize that, and I'm open to that, and I'm receptive of that. And I hope you guys all keep clocking in and have an incredible day. And we will talk very soon. But thank you so much for listening to this 200th episode. Can't wait to see what the future holds. And if you or your friends and family feel like you need to improve, share the video, share the podcast. It allows us to do so much more as you continue to share it. So thank you and talk soon. Peace. Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there and have a great day and keep clocking in.